to stone. I turn to stone when you coming home. I can't go on.
Hate to fade it. So I have some housekeeping items. By the way, it's Ask or Tell Me Anything. You can call, as Mike and Diana have already. You can call 888-720-9677. Better known possibly as 888-720-WNPR, if you're into the whole alphanumeric thing. And we will talk about whatever you want to talk about. Oddly, Mike and Diana both want to talk about the same thing, which is quite interesting. But before that, I have some housekeeping items, as we say. First of all, who left their towel on the floor here in the studio? No, it's not that. So, first of all, I wanted to say that we're doing today for the music. The Dark Wizard, Dylan Reyes, and I are doing what we call the Charlie Hunter Challenge, what I call the Charlie Hunter Challenge. So every song, Charlie Hunter is this kind of, he's not just a session guitarist, he's more than that. He's a real kind of co-auteur with a lot of musical talents, and he's kind of, anyway, he plays on a lot of records. That's what I'm really trying to tell you. So all of the songs that we're using today are going to have Charlie Hunter involvement in them, including, if you heard the billboard before the show, that was Charlie Hunter. This is Charlie Hunter with Kurt Elling. It's all Charlie Hunter. I don't know. You don't care about this. Why am I even telling you about it? You don't care about this. Dylan and I care about it. All right, some other things. Speaking of music, coming up this week on Wednesday night at Watkinson School, What the World Needs Now, the chemistry of Burt Bacharach and Dionne Warwick. We're going to be live recording a show there, well, no, I don't know. We're recording a show there. That probably will require massive amounts of editing, but not by me. But we have a wonderful lineup for you. LaTanya Farrell and Steve Metcalf, Matt and Atla de Champlain. We've just added a drummer and a bassist, whose names I should have put in the doc. Well, Lou Bacciarelli is the bassist. Molly Sales, I'm going to say, is the drummer. And it's a lot of fun, and it's $15 for you to get in. It's 7 to 9, roughly, p.m. on Wednesday. Go to ctpublic.org/Colin for info and tickets. And also be prepared to sing along with certain Burt Bacharach songs. Do I have to say anything else? I want to see a couple more things, and then I'll get right to Mike and Diana, anybody else who wants to talk. And that is, first of all, I have to sort of correct myself about a thing. So last week, talking to Timothy Snyder, which, by the way, the Timothy Snyder show has just kind of gone off the rails in terms of just who's listening and how. But in talking to Timothy Snyder, I talked about the fact that the ACLU, you want to make donations to them if you really appreciate the lawsuits that they filed to correct some of the insanity of the early parts of 2025, but their donations are tax deductible. That actually is a true statement, but it turns out there's also something called the ACLU Foundation, where you can give tax-deductible donations, and I think they do support some of the litigation and stuff. So you should know that. People wanted me to tell you that. And I guess maybe the only other thing I really have to tell you right now, because I'll forget to tell you otherwise, is, I've been thinking a lot. So we're a week ago today, kind of while we were on the air, the story broke about the infamous Signal group chat. The group chat about bombing the Houthis, with Jeffrey Goldberg is one of the people on the chat. And, one of the things that's come up over the course of the week, particularly in places like The Daily Show, is why would how could this happen? How would you have, an identification of somebody, whether it says Jeffrey Goldberg or JG or whatever it says, and then, how could you have that identification and then that number? One of the 8 different implausible things the Trump administration has said was that this doesn't happen. This is not that unusual. Sometimes you have a name, on your contact list, but the number is for somebody else. As one of the hosts on the Daily Show said, that's not a thing. Nobody does that unless they're having an affair. But I will say, not that we're having an affair, but if someone were to hijack all of my contacts and then try to put Al Pacino into a group chat, the Al Pacino contact on my phone, they would actually be putting journalist Frankie Graziano into that chat. So, it does happen. That's just a sort of a John Mulaney ripoff idea, but I just thought, it'd be cool if Frankie ever called me, and says Al Pacino, and I have Al's picture that will come up too, like we're really good friends. All right, we're ready to go to the phones here, and as I say, our first two callers want to talk about the same thing. I'm sure they have strikingly different comments on it, but let's start out with Diana in Bristol. Hi, Diana.
Hey, Colin. That is exciting that there's another caller that wants to talk about it. Yes, I listened to the interview with Chris Murphy, and it was quite poignant, quite powerful also.
Just to locate everybody else, this is David Remnick's interview with Chris Murphy on this weekend's the New Yorker Radio Hour. Please continue.
What really, a couple of things that really spoke to me. Number one, he said, we don't have years regarding our democracy. We have months. When asked about how the Republicans, when he talks to them privately, he's being told, oh, it's really not that bad, as it is. The third thing that really stood out to me, and there was a lot of things that stood out to me, but was really, also poignant, is if we are in our democracy is an emergency, we need to act like it is. And that has propelled me to reach out to the Republican states and start calling. I started that today, calling representatives there, state senators or offices, and just voicing my concern constructively as to, what I feel is important. Colin, I know you talked to a lot of people you might not remember, but you said to me to keep listening and learning, and that's what I've been doing, and that's helped me to be able to communicate more effectively and factually, because I think that's important here. What's important also is just not the right or wrong, as much as I think human nature, we want justice, but what is truth? And that, I think, is the point here, is being able to effectively communicate the truth. But I've decided, I've tasked myself with calling all the Republicans in the Republican states to see, just maybe something can happen, maybe nothing will, but at least I have to try. And another concern that I have also is, he brought out how President Trump had 4 years to go ahead and plan this. So this is, we can see this is well thought out, planned, and executed. So we need people or someone to do the same thing, to kind of propel this also. So those are my thoughts.
Those are all really good thoughts. I'll just say a couple of things. First of all, I think what you're doing is great. I mean, biblically, it is better to light a single candle than to curse the darkness. So you are lighting a single candle and maybe again and again lighting candles. I think that's, it's valuable to do something. I also, really can't sort of tell people they should do this because it's inappropriate. But there is, of course, this kind of national day coming up this Saturday, for April 5th. And, there'll be gatherings in several places around Connecticut. But the big one, I think, is supposed to be at the state capitol in Hartford. And similar things are going to happen all around the country. I think it's time maybe for a show of bodies. I was looking at an overhead picture this morning of people in Turkey, 2 million people showing up to protest Erdogan, like all in the same place, 2 million people. And it made me think back to during the Bush years when the Bush 43 years when, these national security letters were going out and stuff like that. And it was getting the whole sort of Alberto Gonzalez style of enforcing the Patriot Act was getting a little scary. I was talking to this guy he was a pizza parlor owner. He was from Greece, very, very smart young guy. And he'd lived in Greece for a while. And he said that when he watched Americans, he always thought, in Greece, the government's kind of afraid of the people. Like the farmers will have a strike and there'll be like wagons and, stuff blocking the roads, just chaos breaking out. He said in the U.S., people seem more afraid of the government than the government feeling afraid of the people. And I mean, ideally, you maybe need a little of both, but you certainly don't want people who are afraid of the government all the time. And I think people in the past 2 months have become more afraid of the U.S. government than I've ever seen them in the 70 years, because they will do anything. And I mean, people are literally, these ICE agents or people claiming to be ICE agents are showing up in masks, and grabbing people off the street. I don't blame people who are afraid, but being afraid is not helpful. I don't blame you if that's your instinct. I certainly have dark moments of the soul when I feel afraid too, but I think being bold and brave and realizing that there's a certain amount of safety in numbers, not ironclad safety, but safety in numbers, I think is important. Get out there and show your faces. This stuff bothers you. And so I love what you're doing. I think it's great. And I salute you. So thanks for your call, too.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll go to, I had a few thoughts about the Chris Murphy interview, but maybe I will keep them to myself. Or maybe they'll come out while I'm talking to Mike. Hi, Mike. You're on the air.
Hi, Colin. How are you? Yeah. So, Chris Murphy is one of the, not a large number of Democrats that are really saying this is a 5-alarm fire.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying he actually said, and I totally agree with this. I've thought this for a long time, that even the midterm elections may not really be legitimate elections. I mean, that's what they want. And so, there's these protests on this Saturday. My thought, and I actually put this on Senator Murphy's website, was let's have the Democratic Party pretend like it's the midterms now, and instead of doing a get out the vote campaign, get out the protest campaign, and send mass emails, knock on doors. In every town and city, designate a location for everybody to meet on a Saturday in June, let's say, and to show your displeasure. Because there's an interesting article in the New York Times op-ed by Jamel Bouie, who says Trump is always, whenever there's a protest that if it's not huge, he always says, well, it's outside agitators, because how could any real American not like what I'm doing? But if literally millions of people showed up in every town and city across the country, I don't know if that would happen. It would be expensive too, but maybe they could earmark some of the money that they're planning for the midterms, because I don't think we could wait till the midterms. I think we've got, that's next year. I mean, that's a year and a half from now. What's going to happen between now and then? So millions of people all over the country on TV, it would be a big deal, and Trump would have to respond to it, which he couldn't say that it's just, George Soros throwing some money at it, and what would he do? I mean, remember during the Black Lives Matter protests, he wanted to send the military out, to shoot.
Well, there were people in unmarked uniforms in the D.C. protests. That was the thing where eventually he got out there and acted weird and waved the Bible around and stuff like that. There were people representing the government, but they were in unmarked uniforms, no identification, no insignia. It was sort of a precursor to what we're seeing now with the guys in the masks. So, yeah, and he did ask Mike Esper, then his Secretary of Defense,
right.
Would it be okay? Was there any reason why you couldn't just shoot protesters in the leg?
And you think Pete Hegseth would say no? He would say anything you say, sir.
Well, the one thing I wanted to say, sort of in response to you, and it's not in response to you and Diana, but it was something that I was thinking about today too. And she was talking about how, Murphy talked about how Trump had his 4-year off season to plan things. I think we know that when we say Trump had time to plan things, it's a little bit of a kind of metonymy or something that really, I don't think he plans a lot of things. And so Gabe Fleischer, who's a young guy who has does the Wake Up to Politics newsletter. He's been on the show a few times. He has a really interesting piece today in his newsletter about how Trump really, if you listen even semi-carefully to the way Trump talks about some of these things, it appears as though he himself has not been read in on some of these big questions or things that his own administration is doing. Now, it could be that he reflexively just says, "I don't know anything about that," if it seems like it's going to be a blot on his escutcheon. But when you listen to the syntax, it really seems like he doesn't know about a lot of this stuff. Either maybe he didn't retain it, or maybe they just didn't tell him. In fact, there is this kind of theory that that the reason that Signal chat existed because so they could keep it away from Trump, so Trump wouldn't know about it. And in his initial set of responses, he did seem to not really know about it. Even after it had been a story for 2 or 3 hours, he seemed to not really know about it. And so, there's this whole other question about who really is doing all this stuff. Is it Trump? Certainly Trump is providing the face and the fuel for it. And then he's got Musk, who's, doing all of his stuff despite not having any real legitimate portfolio to do it with. But I almost feel as though, I thought Gabe Fleischer made a pretty good case that Trump, he may endorse all this stuff in spirit, but there's a real question about how many details he knows anything about.
Well, he claims he didn't know about Project 2025.
Yeah.
And maybe he didn't. Maybe that's true. Maybe that was now that those people, the guy who was the OMB guy, I think is the one of the authors of he's spearheading this thing with Musk, and Trump is like, oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I'll just read a little bit from Gabe today. He says, but days after this story broke about the Signal chat, Trump still seemed unaware of the most pertinent details of the Signal chat. Speaking to reporters on Wednesday, now bear in mind the story did break a week ago today on Monday, Trump was asked to offer an assurance that no classified information was shared in the text thread. And his answer was, well, that's what I've heard. I don't know. I'm not sure, he responded. You'll have to ask the various people involved. I really don't know, which is always very comforting coming from the president of the United States about a major problem in his administration that's been sitting around for 48 hours. But Gabe points out some other things that have come up over time where it just doesn't really seem like Trump knows a lot about what his own administration is doing. And I also think he's fine with them doing stuff he doesn't know about, too, until he's not fine, and then he starts firing people. Mike, thanks for your call. And, she went away. There was somebody who was going to tell a story about Hartford. I'll tell you what. We're going to take a break in just a second here. The number is 888-720-9677. 888-720-WNPR. You can call in about any topic that you choose. I think we have Lake Como Dave coming up here pretty fast, but anybody else, doesn't have to be about all this Trump stuff. You can talk about other things. I like other things. I enjoy other things. All right, we'll be back.
Premier Concerts and Manic Presents bringing Lyle Lovett and his large band to College Street Music Hall in New Haven on August 5th. The Texas-based musician fuses elements of country, jazz, and folk. Tickets available now at collegestreetmusichall.com.
You've heard these stories of people having their phones searched at entry points into the United States, or maybe people getting ready for that and deleting all their texts or their DMs, all their funny, cherished J.D. Vance memes. We're going to talk about the difficulty people are having coming to America, not coming to America, on the next Today Explained.
This afternoon at 3:30.
What draws people to horses?
There's something about it being a creature that's so much larger and more powerful than you, and yet very peaceful.
Hear stories of equine therapy, hobby horsing, pony play, where people express themselves by embodying horses, and even the idea of horses in reincarnation. I'm Kyone Wolf. That's on the next Audacious.
Listen Wednesday night at 11. Support comes from Freed Marcroft Family Law.
Support comes from the Amistad Center for Art and Culture at the Wadsworth Atheneum Museum of Art. Tickets are now available for the People Get Ready Juneteenth Gala and Yoruba World Exhibition opening. Learn more at amistadcenter.org.
Falling leaves in the night. Who can
Again, I would like to play that whole song, but that's not what we do here. And that is Norah Jones and Charlie Hunter doing more than this. All right, it's Ask Her Tell Me Anything. There's so much to say and so little time, and lots of interesting callers here coming in on 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. Yeah, we got Sally back. That's good. Sally's in Florida, but she has a past. Hi, Sally. Oops, I got Barbara. I put Barbara up here. It says Barbara. Is this Barbara or Sally? I'm really confused.
Sally.
Sally. Okay, good. Excellent. You're on the air.
Hi. Well, Colin, I've been listening to your show for some time, and we actually live in Berlin, have always been New Britain or Berlin. So thus I know a story regarding, well, I was a kid when this happened, so I don't have all the details, but there was a big bank in Hartford, I believe on Main Street or somewhere nearby, and it had a kind of palazzo layout, very, open, and they had installed a huge Alexander Calder mobile in the center, hanging down over the, a couple stories high. Well, it seemed that the mobile wasn't mobile. It wasn't moving, and it was quite distressing to the staff and the people who purchased it. So they had asked many people, they'd put fans on it, and they turned the fans off, and it would stop again. So they called, my dad was always an engineer at, I guess, can I say Fafner? And they called and sent him there to look at it because it had some bearings in it. So he did whatever he had to do to inspect it. And I'd say this was probably the late 50s, early 60s. And it's huge. And he evaluated that it was not the bearings. And he stood up on the balcony and he's looking down at this mobile. And he looks out the window and he sees the Connecticut River. Mm. And he realizes that because of the metal, the alloy in the largest spa of the mobile, that it was attracted to due north. So every time they tried to make the mobile move with the fans and everything,
they had a natural stopping point. Yeah, had a natural stopping point. Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, halfway through your story, I was thinking, why didn't they just call Sandy Calder up? He was sitting out there in Litchfield County somewhere. He lived out there, but he wouldn't have known that either. So it must have been the old Hartford National Bank, I'm guessing, and
that sounds right.
which is what was actually turned into a restaurant called the Last National Bank after they stopped having that branch there.
And then it was a restaurant, right?
It was a restaurant, yeah, Last National Bank. All right, fascinating story. Art, we brought art and physics and meteorology into it all together. I don't know. How can you do better than that? All right, we're going to keep going here. We're going to go to one of our superstars, the famous Iman from New Haven. Iman, you have the floor now.
Hi, Colin. So I have, I guess, a question that watching a lot of March Madness kind of came up for me. And I guess I'm curious, you're a big Green Bay Packers fan, right? Like, that's your team.
Yes, that is correct.
So going into like a competitive game, do you hope for like a blowout win, or do you hope for a very close game that they win?
That's interesting. And what I would say in a more generalized way, but also this is probably true of me, a lot of it depends on where you are mentally, psychologically, spiritually at a given moment. And I mean, I could give you in just a second an example of this, but, typically you want to see a well-played, fairly exciting game, an exciting game that the Packers win is ultimately way more satisfying to me than the Packers winning, 52-0. At a time when I'm feeling maybe a little vulnerable, I'll take the 52-0 drubbing, and that will maybe make me feel a little bit better. But it's a temporary high, like most highs. So, I think ultimately a real sports fan wants to see a well-played game on both sides that's relatively close, and of course nail-biters that you win are amazing and wonderful. There probably isn't a sports fan high anything close to that. But, so I have to see if I can tell this story without sounding patronizing. but it might be impossible. So in my old job, I worked for a radio station that carried all the UConn games, men and then eventually also women on the radio. Of course, here at CPTV, they were carrying the women on TV as well. And there were, a lot of women fans of the 1990s, early aughts of the women Huskies who kind of hadn't been sports fans, I think, for most of their lives because they were never presented. There was so little presented for women to see, except in the Olympics and a few other occasions. There just wasn't, the kind of mass media attention. And suddenly you get this team and there are all these wonderful women and they're all good students. They keep their GPAs up and they're, good citizens and stuff. And, women often who are middle-aged or older went nuts, understandably nuts for the team. But not having any background as sports fans, they really wanted to see the 35-point blowout. And there was a period of time where UConn was consistently so much better than there were like 3 or 4 teams in the country that could stay on the court with them, and everybody else is getting blown out. And I didn't like those games because a 40-point, UConn would occasionally double the score of the other team. As a sports fan, I would think, Gino, maybe slow it down a little bit or just keep it close, or a little bit close. But I also understand that for women, these women, rooting for sports was kind of a new thing for them. And they brought with them a lot of ways in which they felt hurt and marginalized, in multiple ways, not simply in terms of sports, but in a lot of ways, just not listened to, not noticed. And here was this thing they could really invest their hearts and their souls into, and they would get back a real dividend too, because the team was so good. And so I got it, I understand it. And that's why I say it sort of depends where you are in your life, I think, how you feel about close games versus blowouts. Okay, that was a way longer answer than you wanted.
No, that was great. And I think that's a good point. I also think it's interesting, though, like going into the game, like before the game has even started, does anyone, though, really say, I hope that this is like tonight for UConn's game? Like, is anyone going in saying, I hope it's a close game? Or they're like, I just want UConn to win and get to Final Four? Right.
And of course, all of this has been re-tinctured by the prevalence of betting, because betting often, there's just way, way, way more betting on sports and legalized betting on sports. It tends to make you want to root for bigger margins, depending on what kind of bet you've placed. But I mean, the most common one is, beating the spread and stuff like that. So even that, I guess it depends on which side of that bet you're on. But, so that colors that. I don't want to speak for all sports fans. For me, watching a game like that, football's an easier example for me. I like the Packers to be up about 3 touchdowns and then maybe the game gets closer. Like, I don't want the Packers to fumble the ball.
Do you want them to trail? Or are you okay?
No, I want them to be ahead and the other team could make it competitive. Okay. Yeah, but I want it to be competitive too. I don't want to see a blowout.
Yeah.
So, because I want the endorphins that I'm going to get if the Packers score, the first 2 touchdowns and a field goal before the other team can get on the board. That will, all of this, I think, is happening at a neurochemical level. You're just getting endorphins when good things happen. So we're not even really rationally in control of a lot of this. But I don't know, how do you approach all this?
I love good games. I think even when I root hard for a team, if they're up by like 20 points, I'm thinking basketball. It's like, if I'm there in person, I'm leaving during the fourth quarter to avoid traffic. I don't need to see the end of the game.
Yeah.
But if it's a close game, I'm glued to my seat. But the risk of that is that your team might lose. And that feels, I don't know, at the end of the day, it's like losing also isn't the worst thing. All these teams come out to play hard and they play with their hearts and the sweat and all of it. So yeah, losing is a part of it too, and we all have to be okay with that.
Yeah,
I'd rather see close games.
Right, and I think that was another problem for the early fans of the UConn women. They didn't have much experience with losing.
Yeah.
My first involvement with sports was as a Red Sox fan, and so for a decade or more, I knew a lot about losing. I was so accustomed to losing that during the famous World Series with the Mets, where it appeared as though the Red Sox had it put away and they were going to finally win a World Series, it bothered me a little bit. I felt like, well, that will just sort of complete a circle that has been set been sitting uncompleted for so long. I'm not even sure I welcome that. So yeah, if you know, a lot of it depends on what your experiences are. All right. Well, listen, Iman, great to talk to you.
Me as well. Thank you.
Yeah. And I will say the question that she just laid out, there are sports writers who go their entire career without raising such an interesting and fundamental but underexplored question as the one that Iman just asked. So that's good. All right. So, it looked like Sally. Did I cut Sally off with her? Okay. I'll study the punchline and then I'll get to it. I'm not going to be able to answer this question, but questions that I can't answer are actually fun. Here is Barbara in Simsbury. Hi, Barbara.
How are you?
Fine.
A while back, I asked you a question if anybody knew if John Donne and William Shakespeare knew each other in Elizabethan times.
Right.
And I found the answer.
Yeah. They
sort of.
Lawn bowling. They did lawn bowling together?
No. I bought a book on endangered animals by Catherine Rundell. She is at some university in England. And she wrote a book called Super Infinite, a new sort of biography on the life of John Donne. Absolutely excellent. And in it, she says, well, there is no definite proof because there was a great fire in London and a lot of the papers were destroyed and stuff. So they kind of sort of could have known each other, but probably not. But there's a document where both of their initials are attached to this one document. So there is no real hard proof. But my point is, and I go back to John Donne a lot, he wrote devotions when he was very sick and close to death. Very spiritual readings, very uplifting, and trying to get some answers on the questions of life and so forth. And in these times where we're searching for answers and there might not be any, why we're in so much turmoil and trouble, we go to whomever. It could be Thich Nhat Hanh, it could be anybody, but we're going to sources that help us get some answers and soothe us in a way.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is really important. I mean, I just want to yes and that. And I think the examples you're giving are really good, too, because you're giving examples of people who are not themselves mired in this particular situation, who are not sitting here, sweating the details of these daily news events, or people who don't live here and worry about the future of life under this administration. And I think, I sort of do the same thing. And I think poetry is really, really important. And there are just plenty of days where whether it's Walt Whitman or Mary Oliver or who, but I've got a lot of volumes of poetry in my office where I can just grab one of them. And sometimes that's, you need, or Neruda, maybe you need that more than you need.
It helps you transcend.
Yeah, more than Keith Olbermann's latest thoughts, probably. So
on the here and now, I have started On Freedom by Timothy Snyder. And he outlines the 5 categories of freedom. And I'm just at the beginning of the book, but he talks about Liebe, which is German. I don't know German at all, which is the personhood of the body, as opposed to like a dead body. There's two. And what he says in this is that if we look at people as people having lives and who are have lives as valuable as our own, then we actually can consider them to be human beings just like us, as opposed to the otherization that projects and pushes away from us.
Right, and that's a consistent theme. It's Kant's categorical imperative. It's Jesus's do unto others.
Exactly.
It's a consistent thread for moral action. And first of all, thank you for all of this. There are radio shows, and when I say radio shows, I probably mean most other radio shows that take calls, where somebody calling in about John Donne, the producer would go, "Don't take this call," but you're exactly the kind of caller that I like to talk to. And there's also another world where it's like, okay, talk about John Donne for 2 minutes and then get rid of this caller, but to me, this is a really interesting conversation. And we are doing, as Timothy Snyder instructs, we are treating each other as real people whose ideas are interesting.
And I hope he's safe.
Oh, Tim?
Yes.
Well, he's up in Toronto. I don't know.
Well, I know.
Who's safe?
With a couple of other professors up there.
Yep. Jason Stanley went up there.
The final question I wanted to ask you is: do you think that this was a political move?
For Jason Stanley, it was my understanding, and I mean, I'm not best friends with Timothy Snyder, but I know some of his comments, and I know. So when we did the Timothy Snyder show, I should say, this whole story was kind of leaking out in real time. We recorded that show at 11 a.m. on Wednesday. This whole story was kind of starting to gel. The idea that Snyder and his wife, who's also a professor at Yale, Marcy Shore, I think is her name, and Jason. And then I mentioned on the show that Jason Stanley had also announced that he was leaving, and that he was leaving because of the political situation. Now, the Yale Daily News had a pretty lengthy story in which Snyder says he made this decision before the results of the election came out, and that it had to do with some personal stuff and some family issues and things like that. So, I mean, take that for what it's worth. I don't think
because you uproot your whole family and go someplace else when your kids are in school and stuff,
Yeah, like say
that's a serious decision.
Or like let's say that you were told that you were going to be the UN ambassador, and so you uproot everything and you pack all your stuff up and you get ready.
If it's a good deal, sure, you would do that.
Yeah, and then you suddenly get told when you're all the way out the door, no, you're not going to be the UN ambassador because they don't think they can hold on to your seat in New York. And I mean, she really got screwed. She did all the things you do when you're moving to a new job in a different location, and plus gave up, all of her status, in the House and stuff. So, you have to be careful who you trust in this world. But Barbara, I want to thank you so much for your contribution to the show. It was just great. Okay, so I think what should I do? I think I should take a break now. And then we've got Chris with a book recommendation, Hugh from Hamden, Lake Como Dave, a legend in radio, and perhaps more if you call 888-720-9677.
At the grocery, 'cause I thought that I saw you, but I was just mistaken. My God, how I miss you. But that's just a lesson on life, a lesson on loss.
I'm Robin Young. New York Times columnist Maureen Dowd's new book is a collection of interviews with the notorious Paul Newman, Tina Fey, Elon Musk.
I want operatic. I want larger than life. I want Shakespearean struggles, fatal flaws.
Next time, Here and Now.
Join us this afternoon at 2.
Get to know life in a big way with The Positive Place. Join Andrew and his friends as they make the most of every day. Inspired by Andrew's real-life adventures, they'll learn about accessibility, teamwork, and determination. Get ready to have a great time, because with a positive outlook, anything is possible. Stream the first 3 episodes now at ctpublic.org/positive.
Did you know you can stream Connecticut Public Radio on your Amazon Alexa-enabled device and even set it up as a skill? To enable the skill on your device, just say, "Alexa, enable Connecticut Public Radio." Once enabled, you can ask Alexa to play Connecticut Public Radio anytime, and Alexa will make sure we stay connected. For more information on Connecticut Public Alexa skills, visit ctpublic.org/howtolisten.
Whenever it rains, feel this way. Little something to get me through this day. Give me a little bit. Don't stop playing. Yeah, won't it be a good day? Yeah. Some people in need feel free.
All right, this is all part of our Charlie Hunter challenge that you're not interested in. But Dylan Reyes and I are interested. That's of course D'Angelo. I didn't have to tell you that. And that is Charlie Hunter. I think said that's the hardest session he ever played. Anyway, we can't talk all day about. I mean, Dylan and I can talk about Charlie Hunter, but you don't want to hear that. Dylan Reyes is the technical producer of the show. He just got mentioned. The producer of this episode and the person overseeing screening calls and probably screening calls, unless Angelica's in there doing it, would be Jonathan McPants. And what else do I have to tell you? Meg's on phones. Oh, Meg Fitz is on phones. Okay. So, see, that was an important piece of information. That's probably somewhere in the document I have in front of me. All right. So that's all the thank yous. We are going to go back to the calls here. And let's see. Well, let me go to Chris first, and then we'll go to Lake Como Dave, and then Hugh. Chris, you have the floor.
Hey, I have a book recommendation. I don't know whether this has crossed your radar, called Dark Motherland. And it's a novel that was published just this year. It's set in an alternate reality Nepal and about the political situation there, but it's very contemporary. I think published in January 2025. And it's kind of very hilarious, but very sad at the same time. Kind of like a Dickens novel in a way.
Well, you're selling it. Although, I mean, I think a lot of people are really listening going, oh, I don't need to read this. I'm living it right now.
Well, I'll tell you, it actually is kind of comforting to have something really funny written about the situation that you're in.
I think humor,
and that's kind of what this is.
Yeah.
And in fact, there is President Trump is in this, except he's called President Cornhair.
All right, you're selling it, Chris. Thanks for the recommendation. And yeah, I mean, humor is important. It's important in terms of what it does for us and our souls, and once again, endorphins and stuff like that. But also, it's a great way to kind of speak a certain kind of truth to a certain kind of power. Tyrants tend to be really troubled when they are mocked, which is a good reason for mocking them. Oh, one other quick cultural point, since he just recommended that book. So I was driving in today and I was listening to Fresh Air. Fresh Air is an excellent radio program. I would recommend it to anyone interested in the subject. But they were interviewing the actor Stephen Graham, who we were talking about on Friday because of the series Adolescence, which is very talked about. But I do want to say that since Friday, I've begun watching the other series that features Stephen Graham and even more notably, Erin Doherty, who, if you've seen Adolescence, Erin Doherty plays the psychiatrist in the third episode who comes in to interview the young boy. Anyway, they're both in a series called 1000 Blows that takes place in the 19th century. It's about the world of East End bare-knuckle boxing, but it's about a lot more than that too. And Erin Doherty plays Mary Carr. This kind of, I think it's based on a real person too. This very colorful, sort of kind of high-level street criminal. Anyway, I'm addicted. I love it so much. All right, here's Lake Como Dave with a message for us. Hi, Dave.
I don't know about a message. I count.
You have a message
but anyway,
for us.
Yeah. Actually, for people looking for a Stephen Graham role that's not huge but is very interesting, I'd recommend going back, 10 plus years to the Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, the Gary Oldman
He's
one.
in that one, yeah.
Plays a good role in that.
He's also played he's played 3 real life American gangsters. I pointed this out on Friday. Tony Pro in The Irishman, Babyface Nelson in Public Enemies, and Al Capone in Boardwalk Empire. Anyway, that's not what you call up about.
Oh, that's okay. I also have a rant about Dan Hurley, but I know you're short of time. But, for people who are frustrated, as I am, with the apparent weakness of the Democratic Party, the lack of aggressiveness, and also feeling like, what can I do? I would say focus on these, we got these, it's a little late now for the 2 House special elections tomorrow, but, it looks like we could win that Josh Weil campaign in Florida to replace Mike Waltz, and then there's another race if we ran the table with both.
Yeah, the other one is the old Matt. The other one's the old Matt Gaetz seat, actually. So
right.
Be careful about sitting. You might want to spray it with something before you sit in the old Matt Gaetz seat.
Exactly. First act would be to redecorate that office, but but I mean, it's like. And I would say also stay alert for future opportunities with somebody, due to health or due to, retirement or just something like that. The House is right there. And if somebody wants to actually make an impact, by calling, by volunteering for a campaign or whatever for one of these special elections, we can stop a lot of that agenda right in its tracks, having control of the House, even if it's tenuous. And also, there's no guarantee that even if after tomorrow we're down to a 216, 215 minority, it's very hard to get all those 216 Republicans to vote for any one thing. So, I would focus energy on that if people want to feel, that they could maybe do something.
Yeah, it's probably, we have tomorrow coming up some special elections and also there are just some statewide races that run in odd numbered years. So we'll, it'll be a little interesting meat thermometer. I think personally, and this is just me being the kind of political journalist that people basically don't like, I have a hard time making those Florida numbers work the way that they work. They have to work to deliver a victory. But, if it's close, if it's an 8-point win, that sends a message. Believe me, the Republicans will get that message too. But Lacomo Dave, thanks so much for calling today. I now have time, I think, to talk to Hugh from Hamden. Hi, Hugh. You're on the air.
Hey, Colin. How you doing?
Just fine.
I just tuned in and I heard the caller speak about the Green Bay Packers. You got the caller speak about the Green Bay Packers game.
Yes.
And it reminded me of a couple of years ago, the last NCAA Ice Hockey Championship that QU won, where the only time they led was when they won that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not an ice hockey guy, but I actually sat and watched that game, and I thought it was excellent. That's what sports is about for me.
Yeah, really, that kind of that sort of comeback where you've never led all game, but the goal in this case to put you ahead is the first time you've led and you win the game that way. That is a certain kind of thrilling thing, and probably the kind of thing too. I will say you're the second person today to engage with me on the topic of collegiate ice hockey, which maybe not a subject I gravitate to naturally, but it's just so sort of weird that you can start watching a game with a maybe a college that you didn't attend and don't have much of a relationship to, and if the game is great, by the end you're just living and dying with every breath of the game, every exchange of the game, and I think that's it's possible to waste a lot of your time watching sports, but on the other hand, there are some good reasons to watch, and I think you just offered one.
First ice hockey game I ever watched.
There you go.
And it was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Don't expect them all to be like that, Hugh. They're not going to be. But thanks very much for that as well. Okay. Is there anything else I need to do today before we go? I want to mention, once again, we have the Burt Bacharach, Dionne Warwick thing that's coming up at Watkinson. You can come to that. I don't think we've sold that out yet. You have to go to ctpublic.org/Colin for info and tickets. It's on Wednesday night. You'll be part of a live taping. You'll do some singing. You'll be on the air. It'll be wonderful. I guess I did everything else that I needed to do today. But thank you for this. No, I should have mentioned at the beginning of the show probably that we stream our Monday shows, our Ask or Tell Me Anything shows. Those are always streamed live on YouTube. And so you could have watched this live on YouTube if I had told you this at the beginning, but some of you did anyway. And also then the YouTube thing will now become available as a podcast. You have to go to the Connecticut Public channel of YouTube and do any number of things, and then you will be able to. Anyway, thanks very much for listening, and thanks to Charlie Hunter for providing us with all this great music. I mean, he didn't personally call us up and say, I've got some music, would you like to use it? But just, in an apostrophic way. Thank you, Charlie Hunter.
Well,